One of Max Weber's most important contributions to society was the idea of ideal types. And so this is a concept that you can use practically anywhere in your life to try and determine how well that institution or how well that concept is holding up to the purest form. Let me see if I can explain a little better. So now remember that Max Weber did most of his work trying to research and understand complex historical institutions. And so he wanted to try to figure out what it was about institutions that made them successful or unsuccessful. And so he came up with this concept of the ideal type when he was looking at what a bureaucracy is. What is a bureaucracy and what should a bureaucracy be? And again, as I have been stressing all along, we have to understand not only the work of Weber from a historical context, but also when we apply the concept of ideal types to our everyday life, we need to be able to look back historically and see why it is that we've gotten to that particular place with the concept. So ideal types aren't real. They're not steeped in reality, but they are the perfect form or the perfect state of something that we can use to measure reality against. And so they become a sort of measuring stick for us. Now, as I said, Weber did his work with regard to the characteristics of a bureaucracy, so the ideal type of bureaucracy. And he said that in a perfect world, in its perfect state, a bureaucracy would have 5 very important characteristics, and it would perform each one of these characteristics optimally. So let's take a look at each one of these. The characteristics of a bureaucracy according to Weber. Number 1, you would have clear divisions of labor. Workers would be assigned to do specific, specialized tasks, and while those all would work together for the bureaucracy to function properly, each person would have their own job to do. The second characteristic is rules and regulations. The rules and regulations that a bureaucracy puts in place help to guide the actions of workers and help to ensure that tasks are performed uniformly. And so these rules and regulations, for example, in an institution from today, may come down from the corporate office. They might come down from a board of trustees. They could come down from your human resources division. But these rules and regulations would ensure the smooth functioning of the bureaucracy. The third characteristic is hierarchy of authority. This means that the decision-making power of the bureaucracy moves from the top down to workers in lower positions. And so there's a clear path or a clear trajectory to how decisions are made. And this is visualized really easily within the concept of the military. Realistically, in the military, decisions are made by our Joint Chiefs of Staff and our Commander-in-Chief. And those decisions that they make trickle down to even the lowest level, the privates who come in right from basic training. The fourth characteristic of a bureaucracy is technical qualifications. Here we see that hiring and promoting people based on their ability to perform a job or a task is important to the smooth functioning of a bureaucracy. So Weber here sees this as an important essential component to the smooth functioning of a bureaucracy, in that we wouldn't want to hire people who aren't good at doing the job or who don't have the qualifications to do what we demand of them when they get the job. The fifth and final characteristic is impersonality. Here, and in particular in the bureaucracy of the workplace, we have to allow our workers to perform without any kind of personal feelings toward them. So if we're a supervisor, here we would want to remove those personal feelings from the equation, and we want to treat everybody on the job really just based on how they're doing their work, with disregard to their personality and our personal feelings. This means that everybody on the job is treated equally. it also means that every client that you have on your job would be treated equally. So Max Weber points out these 5 characteristics, and he says that in a true perfect state, these 5 attributes would allow the bureaucracy to function as a well-oiled machine. Now we can use this concept of the ideal type in our research and in our theorizing. Let me give you an example that we can use that's a little bit clearer to understand. Alright, we can look at a ruler, if you will, and we can talk about the ruler being our concept of the ideal type. So let's talk about, in its perfect state, what our concepts in America today are of femininity and masculinity. And so you can see here I've got 2 ends to the ruler. Now the numbers on the ruler aren't important. Notice, however, that the arrows are pointed to the far ends of the ruler. So let's say that our left side is perfect femininity and our right side is perfect masculinity. We don't exist at these extremes. We can make a list of those characteristics of the ideal of femininity and the ideal of masculinity, but we don't exist there. We exist somewhere in the middle. So the actual concept of the ideal doesn't exist in reality, but what happens is it becomes a measuring stick by which reality is assessed. And so talking about those characteristics of ideal masculinity, we want a man who is strong, who can support us, who can provide for us. We even know really what he looks like. The same can be said for the ideals of femininity. We want a woman who is caring, nurturing, who knows her way around the kitchen. We also understand physically what she is supposed to look like. Now, do those ideals change over time? Yes, absolutely. And this is why Weber said we must understand the ideal within the context of history. Has the ideal type of femininity changed in the last 100 years in the United States? And the answer to that is an overwhelming yes. Likewise for masculinity, although we don't see as big a change in regard to the characteristics of masculinity as we do for the characteristics of femininity, we still have seen changes over time. We must understand things in the context of history. And Max Weber's ideal types, his theory about how things should exist in their pure state and how we use that pure state of characteristics to measure reality, shows us why history is important to understand. I hope this helps. Take care.